Now, to begin with, the minority in Parliament is accusing the police of a cover-up in that matter that came up a few months ago where it was an issue of 500 missing excavators. Now, minority spokesperson on Mines and Energy, Adams Mutawakilu, is questioning why 6 months after Environment Minister Professor Kwabena Frimpong disclosed about some 500 excavators seized from illegal mining operations had gone missing, nothing has happened to those allegedly involved. He alleges the police will never be able to get to the bottom of the issue because MPP officials are responsible for the missing excavators. My colleague Joseph Opoku-Gakpo joins us with more. What more did Mr. Mutawakilu say, Joseph?
He goes on to make the point that they in the minority are disappointed that although this became a key national conversation, and in Mr. Wakilu's words, Professor Kwabena Frimpong confessed to the alleged missing excavators, and there were subsequent disclosures in the words of Mr. Wakilu that he was allegedly involved. Nothing in terms of action by the police has happened. He makes the point that the police have indicated over the last few months that they've been investigating without them coming out with the details of their investigation. He says, as far as he's concerned, there are leading NPP figures behind the said missing excavators. And for him, if it even goes beyond excavators, he goes on to allege that some of the gold products that were seized in some of those operations are still things that are with officials at the Environment Ministry and the security agencies and the Interministerial Committee that were involved in the mining activities, which have all not been disclosed. And he goes on to allege that a lot of those products, including the gold products and excavators and all, are things that are going back to finance the activities of the NPP as a party, which is how come the police are unable to go into the specific investigations. And he goes on to say they, as the National Democratic Congress, are promising that when they manage to form a government going into the future, they will investigate this matter, they will prosecute those involved, they will return the said excavators to the individuals who it belongs to, and ensure that things like the illegal gold products are disposed of along the lines that are required by law, so that then the state has adequate possession of them, rather than it going to party apparatchik, if you claim.
Now, Joseph, was there a response from the majority?
Not yet. We're still waiting to get that from the majority side.
Is there anything else that came up on the floor today?
So this was actually a conversation on the parlor of Parliament, not exactly on the floor itself, that we've been having with Addo Mutawakilu, who is the minority spokesperson on Mines and Energy. On the floor itself, a number of issues have come up. The House is currently approving a loan facility to the tune of about $230 million to finance various projects to help ensure that the roads across the country look good. Now, a concern has come up from the minority. The Deputy Minority Leader, James Aveji, has been pointing out that, well, actually, when the House began sitting, there were just about 16 MPs on the floor out of the 275 members of Parliament. So Mr. Aveji made the point that before the House can have a quorum to actually sit on any issue, the Constitution actually requires that there are at least 2/3 of MPs on the floor. Well, actually, it says there should be at least 1/3 of MPs on the floor before sitting begins, and there should be at least 2/3 before they can go ahead and take major decisions. So Mr. Wakilu makes the point that as at the time that the House was sitting to approve this particular loan, there were just about 16 MPs on the floor, less than 1/10 of the total number of MPs, which meant that they didn't have the adequate numbers to be able to take such a decision. And he was asking that the Speaker goes ahead, suspend the thing. But the Majority Leader, Chairman Sabonso, intervened and insisted that yesterday there was a conversation on that, and there was an agreement that because there's campaigning happening and a lot of MPs are in their constituencies, both sides had agreed that they won't raise issues of quorum. So he was surprised that the Deputy Minority Leader was raising this issue. And he went on to say that this is not the first time. 4 years ago, around this time when it comes to campaigning, the numbers were low, but major agreements were approved and loans were approved. Eventually, Professor Michael Quay ruled that the House had that prior agreement, and so issues of quorum cannot be raised, and the House has since continued its business with the low numbers on the floor.
Joseph, thank you very much for joining us from Parliament. Forces. Yeah. Now, this is your election headquarters, and residents of Banu in the Jamai South District of the Banu region are determined to vote skirt and blouse in the December presidential and parliamentary elections. They have erected banners to amplify their intentions. Some residents who spoke to JoyNews complained bitterly about the poor state of their 11-kilometer road leading to the district's capital. For them, the nature of that road is enough for them to vote against their NPP MP Yao Afo. Listen.
Ye ura mampanyi akufo Addo. Ye hu se oye nneema bebre ba ye jaman ha de mpuntuo no atosina mai because ye kwan ye so bi yale kura na ufiri he kodrobo a wo behwe kura na wajamu wo kwan musanse kwan no nye enti ye mpuntuo aboyen enti se ye hia nneema bebre enti ye disi ye MP no omwa enti ye adwense ye beto skirt and brasso ape MP foforo ebi ana ono de ba na waboai ezanse abano de owo Accra ono maha de owo ha no nim ye haw enso moae
me dia me mo dia me to 100% sure NDC ba de ndi amam 4% mo to aba skirt and brass no say former MP no free krom ha oba ye de oye bia akwa we ba ye no are onye ni fie akonwa nti on so so aba 16 years 12 years ni wantim ye kwan kura mo nam so mo ba no mo ni ahu bi usikra kronkwanso sesi amasa obeye wawere ho na no abaya bi kro wo no omode ne to motokiam ne bede
na akura na me ka se yetu kware nya mieni na ye kware mfata se nga abakura ba yetu bi ye ma abane ndi saade no di ohai pa ndi sa ho ba boa ya ho moaye na anya sa ye ho kire afi bia ye to abanso ye hu hwe ye kware ne so
am say ha ye gui sebio mpuntu djuma ne ye hwehwe am say ne edi kan intimi nya niema bibiri mfiri aban ho na etie kurasa na nka ye nya ye light die na nka ye problem ba akone kwan am say yampi no so aye de ne si so no akọ 3 times ese wo hye ye kwan ye nam so ya no kronyam na mu niema mu edene nti anya hwe kura wantimi angu kotara ma senge ni tambia so na nka afidi na nso twa so ma ya na nka ye ho atoye kakra because Jamai South ho akwa na makoma 4 ne wo ha at least nga akọ 3 times kura anya hwe waye ba akwa na mienu kura de ama ya na woni da so se mienu aka no betimi aye se na na ba ye or free education ama ye nka ono mo abo aye na nka eti aso de nga kwan 9 miles from Dobu to Kwamse kura de nga head anya kwan bia ha dwen bebe so oni mo bia obetimi de abo aye nti se change no mafoforo so ba
MP ni die MP ni die ekese onabo ya hafo obabo e pare an ye boa to the extent of 12 years ye hunu hwe kwani oye kwana asoto 9 ye kwan wi mekese ne number 1 odi hu Jamai wi sunyen kwan firi ho kwan wi no wo normal de be yibe firi ha no enye easy cash okọ body okọ banche okọ bia so to okọ asembrim na why not to say to no so na say odi mbuntunuma na to no ekọ no a kwan no nya ne se o pese ye oden so hu tina de oho no skirt and blouse no de yewom ne wom kira wom ade che tambia yewom ye nyam buntuo ne de a oboa oba so na wanye ni a ye yiwa afiro de foforo abehye ho sa not here.
You just heard various residents of the Jamai South constituency. They were saying emphatically that they would not retain the sitting member of parliament in office because of the poor state of their roads. Now, we move to other stories, and despite President Akufo-Addo's admonition to voters to reject independent candidates, Member of Parliament for Fomena in the Ashanti region, Andrew Amankwai Siama, has filed his nomination to contest his re-election as an independent candidate. His decision comes after refusing to contest the party's primaries following claims of discrepancies in the voter album. If successful, the MP for Fomena will be the first independent representative and second non-NPP candidate for the area after the NDC won the seat in 1992. Love FM's Danai Aljima visited the constituency and has filed this report.
The incumbent MP contested the voter album for the NPP's primaries in court after internal process to rectify supposed anomalies proved futile. Mr. Esiama withdrew from the NPP parliamentary primaries after he lost legal action, leaving Philip Ofori Asante to run unopposed. The MP has since filed nomination to contest the seat as an independent candidate, automatically denouncing his membership of the NPP. Some constituents are excited about the move. One of them is former NPP Communications Director, Seth Odro.
People have realized that he needs to be maintained to continue his good works he has started. The choice of an MP depends solely on the constituents. No one else. No regional chairman nor regional campaign team can determine our MP for us.
They accuse the constituency chairman, Akwesi Anti Asamoah, of scheming to ensure successive MPs serve one term.
With the inception of Chairman Akwesi Anti into office, everything has changed. All MPs who have come after Honorable Afrifa had only one term mandate, which is 4 years. Honorable Abu Bansra, 4 years. Honorable Atabua for 4 years. There was an attempt to give lawyer Esiama also 1 year term to experience say. The reason given by constituency chairman and his executive has always been non-performance. However, with regard to the current MP, Honorable Esiama, he has performed so creditably.
But the NPP is not perturbed. Party chairman Akwesi Anti Asamoah says there is no hidden agenda.
Chairman Akwesi Anti will be anchor one term. Said the amount will be perception.
I have no agenda to remove MPs after one term. As youth organizer, I followed and campaigned for the late Honorable Afrifa, and he went for 3 terms. Abu Bansra took over after his demise. I single-handedly convinced the party members to let him do another term, since his first was just 2 years. Atabuafo contested him and won. Atabuafo also lost his next bid to Honorable Esiama, who worked with him at KMA. For JoyNews, Nana Aljima reporting.
Now, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has begun a 2-day campaign tour of the Western region. He will cut short for the commencement of some projects and commissioned those which have been completed. His first port of call would be Wasa Atobiase in the Wasa East constituency, where he will interact with the chiefs at a Durbar that will be organized in his honor. He is there currently. Nathalia Kwanza is there. Nathalia, describe for us the atmosphere at Wasa Atobiase in the Wasa East constituency.
All right, Daniel. So there's massive crowd at Wasa Atobiase right now, even though the Vice President has finished with his speech. He has finished addressing the residents. Over there, you could see a lot of them with placards, something, thank you for NACOP, thank you for free education, thank you for free water, among others. Basically, it's just a campaign for addressing the chiefs and the residents. Vice President Bawumia then asked them that they another Senate, that is come December 7th, they should vote for the NPP government. He did ask the people that what did the NDC government do for them when they came in power for 8 years under the former President Mahamudu's administration. So he came to ask them to vote for them. Daniel, it was also at this level that the CEO of COCOBOD also spoke about the fact that former President Mahama should shut up when it comes to issues of cocoa. Because it was being a Senate that the swallow disease almost collapsed the cocoa sector in the country.
Right. And Natalia, so from Wasa Atobiase, where next is the Vice President going?
Daniel, we are going to Jomoro, where he's also going to meet the Durbar of chiefs and residents to speak to them. as well.
Thank you very much, Natalia Kwanzaa. Let's head over to the Upper East region, where President Akufo-Addo is also embarking on a tour there. Albert Sori has joined us. Good afternoon, Albert. Tell us what the president has been up to. Right, Albert, can you hear me? You're live on JoyNews today. This is your election headquarters. In just a little over 60 days to election 2020, and we are tracking every single activity related to the big day in December. And the United Front Party has held its National Congress in Kumasi with a promise to make local languages compulsory for teaching and examining students in schools. Leader of the party, Nani Janine Boateng, observes the current practice of teaching in English has become a barrier, denying many of a chance to pursue their dreams. Prince Appiah was at the National Congress and manifesto launch of the UFP in Kumasi and has filed this report.
The education sector over the years has become a focus for policy intervention by all the political parties in their manifestos. Leadership of the United Front Party say local languages must be prioritized in Ghana's educational sector. Nana Ajeni Boateng is the flag bearer.
No, the most painful thing in this country is the language barrier. How can a Asante boy, they will tell him he did not qualify for English, so they will not permit him to do a medicine. How many of our hospitals, when you attend a patient who come and say, doctor, my tummy, doctor, my waist or my head, they will speak in their local dialect. So we will make English a choice. Our language has been barrier to us, and I don't think we should continue being in the mental slavery. It's about time we emancipate ourselves from the mental slavery. We must show our original identity as a Ghanaian. We have many tribes in this country. We need to produce medical doctors in Frafra, medical doctors in Nzima, medical doctors in Gan, medical doctors in Sehi and Asante. And they can do it better than, most of the medical doctors. They can't even understand the local dialect where they have posted him or her. So we have a problem with our education system.
He spoke at the National Congress and manifesto launch, where he was popularly acclaimed as flag bearer. Mr. Ajeni Boateng says he will clamp down on corruption in his first year if he wins the election.
We are suffering under this present government. They have stolen our money. As soon as we resume office in 2021, we shall retrieve all the monies, and we will use those money to build roads. We will use those monies to build quality health care and better education systems.
On agriculture, the UFP says it will create a special board for vegetable production that will take the form of cocoa board. Mr. Ajeni Boateng believes this will ensure the sector gets the necessary resources to especially stop the continuous importation of tomatoes from landlocked Burkina Faso.
Most of the times, we have concentrated on only one crop, and we have a cocoa board. Under United Front Party, we are going to create another board, like Tuba will get their board. We will have a vegetable board.
To the Upper East region now, and President Akufo-Addo has been assuring residents of fulfilling every promise made in the 2016 election. My colleague, Albert Sori, has joined us with more. Albert, tell us more about what the president has been saying.
Hello?
Albert, you're on air.
Yes, Daniel, we are in a moving car, so I didn't hear your first question, if you can.
Right. Albert, we understand that the president is touring the Upper East region.
Yes, President began his 2 days of Upper East region this morning, where he made a stop at the palace of the paramount chief of the Tarisi traditional area. He assured the people of the Upper East region that he is keeping to the promises he made prior to the 2016 election. One of them is the Bolgatanga Boko Pulmakum Road, which is under construction. He also talks about the Poalugu Multipurpose Dam, which the government has cut short for, with the hope that when it is completed, it will help stop the perennial flooding that we often see because of the village of the Bagre Dam from Burkina Faso. The president is moving from there towards the Boko West, where he will be addressing the people there at a Deba in Kubori. He will later stop in the Nabdam constituency, where he will inspect a one constituency, one warehouse project, and also hold another Deba there as well. He will wrap up today's tour in Bolgatanga, where he will commission a street lightning project.
Right. Albert, tell us about the response of the people in the Upper East region.
Yes, so the paramount chief of the Tarensi traditional area, Tongran Kubuso Nalevtang, was happy that the president is keeping to the promises he made to the people. He also talked about the Poalugu Multipurpose Dam and the Bolga Boku Road, which he said that the president was keeping his promise and trying to deliver on these two projects. He was appealing to the president to ensure that these projects are seen to their full completion. And he also gave his blessing to the president as he begins his tour of the Upper East region today.
Thank you very much, Albert. Sorry for that update. Now, former President John Dramani Mahama this morning launched a campaign in Sehuyoso in the Western North region. Here are excerpts of his speech at that virtual campaign launch.
I took aggressive steps to develop and consolidate our health infrastructure, our educational infrastructure, our transport infrastructure, and our digital and communications infrastructure. This is the only way to build a resilient nation. Without creating and consolidating a developed infrastructure, no nation can prosper and resist global shocks such as the current COVID-19 pandemic. In 2012, Ghana's GDP was $41 billion. It was $55 billion in 2016. According to the facts, during my first term as president, we were able to add onto the size of our GDP almost $14 billion. Ghana's GDP in 2020 is projected to be somewhere around $59 billion. This means that the current MPP government has managed an addition of only $4 billion in 4 years. This is the difference between us and them. We delivered $14 billion growth in 4 years, while they delivered only $4 billion growth in 4 years. Some might say the reason NPP is delivering only $4 billion growth is because we are now hit by a global crisis generated by COVID-19. That may be true, but during my first term as president, we had to face 2 years of a free fall in commodity prices on the international market, which affected us. For almost a year or so, thanks to a court case generated by the NPP, the country was on wait and see mode. We also faced the Ebola epidemic. So you see, the conditions are similar. And this is why my comparison between my first term as president and Nana Akufo-Addo's term as president is relevant. And the debate between the two of us would have settled this once and for all.
And this is your election headquarters. Stay with us for the latest election news. Now, away from voting, though, some fishermen in the Central Region are calling on government to publish the names of recipients of outboard motors it's distributed to fishermen across the coastal regions of the country. This follows an investigation by freelance investigative journalist Manasseh Zuriawuni that revealed that the Infantsiman constituency's second vice chairman of the governing New Patriotic Party NPP sold an outboard motor subsidized by government for a fisherman at a higher price. Now, at a news conference at Elmina on Tuesday, they chastised government for politicizing the fisheries sector. Richard Kojonyako has more.
In August this year, after government, through the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture, distributed outboard motors to fishermen along Ghana's coastal regions at subsidized prices, some fishermen in the central region raised red flags accusing government of giving the outboard motors to party functionaries instead of fishermen. The 40 horsepower Yamaha outboard motors cost close to 20,000 on the market, but government gave the outboard motors to the fishermen at a subsidized price of 10,000 Ghana cedis. The canoe fishermen were supposed to register with details of their canoes and pay to the bank before being allocated the outboard motors. Investigative journalist Manasseh Azuria Winnie's expose that led to the arrest of second vice chairman of the MPP in the Mfantsman constituency, who is not a fisherman, but got a subsidized outboard motor and sold it to the team of the investigative journalists. The fishermen in the central region say they are vindicated when they said government outboard motors went to the wrong hands and not fishermen. They want government to account for all the outboard motors it distributed. John Quesin, popularly known as Manoma, speaks for the group of canoe owners.
There is some joyful ship. Outboard motor also from that for 70%.
About 2 months ago, we held a news conference here to tell government that the outboard motors, it says it has distributed to the fishermen, about 70% of it did not go to the fisher folks, but rather party supporters. Two supporters of the MPP organized a news conference to lambast us. Yesterday, we heard that a journalist has gone to buy an outboard motor from a party executive. Let's ask ourselves, what's the name of the canoe of the person who sold the outboard motor to the said journalist? We are by this challenging government to mention the names of all the fishermen it claims it supplied the outboard motors to. If not, then it will be very clear that the president has nothing really to offer us fishermen, but came only for his party people.
If you know whichever regional office, what you be super
Some of the outboard motors were kept at the regional office and later distributed to the party people instead of bringing it to the communities to give to the fishermen.
MPP party for what on what I'm a follow. You grab it, commander. Woman a free cook 8. Commander 4 to a free 100.
John Quesin and his group of fishermen say government has not dealt with them fairly and should show that it has the fishermen at heart. Richard Kwejenyako, JoyNews, Cape Coast.
Now, we made several attempts to reach government for their reaction, but we've not yet been successful. When we are, we will bring you their side of the story. Away from the story, though, 7 dead with scores injured was a news headline exactly 3 years ago after the October 7, 2017 atomic gas explosion. The incident, which could easily pass as one of the country's deadliest infernos, triggered several reforms in the petroleum sector, including regulations on siting of fuel pumps. But after 3 years and several more explosions, concerns are mounting over lessons learned from that infamous incident. My colleague Manu Kranting visited the scene of the explosion, where he's been interacting with some eyewitnesses.
This is right exactly the place where the incident happened. 3 years ago, a gas filling station which was sited right here at Atomic Junction went up in flames, killing 7 people in the process. Many more people were injured. 3 years down the lane, though, what we see now is a lorry station which has sprung up, and as you're seeing, people coming in here to board the vehicles and moving out. And some of them, in fact, still do work here, though. And I'm going to try and speak to this man. He's a taxi driver here at the Atomic lorry station. My boss, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I hope everything is fine.
Yes, sir.
Great. It's 3 years. Tell me what you remember from that day.
Yeah, can be and then it's actually 3 years. Yeah, it just share kasi see what Atomic Junction. Yeah, na me wa see. Okay. Yeah, some kasi pa na see o hanom. Tena mo ba je kwa ma yera ko pa. If you said that no, e pem ne no. You know when you basa. Ene man ko yi man kra. Oh, kwa bebrebe so.
Then kasa na wo kai. Yenim say ejahye ha no, but wo kasa na wo ha no, then na wo kai.
Me kai pa say basa me tu me ka me nu mu wa.
Ka me nu.
Me ka me hete ka stu.
Okay.
Me ka so man FM.
Okay.
Presenter wo be kwari no. Ofri overhead so. E ba hwe for man trimu pai. E ma cars bebrebe hye wa. E ma je o ma no mu ga bi na wi say nko or cross over total filling station inside Akopiska on
talk, but let me talk to this man. Great. What's your name?
My name is Samuel George.
What do you remember from that day?
Oh, that day I remember it was a confusion everywhere. Everywhere people were running up and down. People got bent, cars crashing. I remember people were running up and down, cars crashing. And even I remember they stole somebody's car, a Range Rover. Was coming to purchase something at the filling station. When a thing happened like that, he left the car and somebody took the car. But I remember they said they caught him and collected the car for him.
And so that's the account of somebody who was here, and he's just giving us what he saw and what he learned that day. We'll try and follow, stay here a bit longer and get you some more reaction from a few more of the people who are around here.
You're live on Joy News today, and in less than 24 hours, the grand finale takes off with Opokuwari School squaring off with Addo College and, of course, Presbyterian Boys Senior High School in Legon. Of course, Presec is looking for a 6th trophy after walloping Kumasi Academy and Keta Senior High Technical School. But will their opponents allow the 6th trophy to come home? Let's take a listen to the finalists who are speaking to Mamavi Oso-Abuaje this morning on the AM show.
That's always been good.
What do you say just before the contest?
A prayer.
Okay. As you're seated there.
Yeah.
Is that same for you, Presec?
Yes, please.
Okay. Adisco?
Same.
Do you think about the people either at home, like back watching you, or the people who are seated in terms of your colleagues? What do you think about? Do you imagine all the scenarios playing out, or you're just concentrating on what is happening?
It's more of like when you are backstage before you get to sit on the stage. I think that's when you can lose focus and think about what might go on wrong, and you think about what others might say if you lose and stuff like that. But when you're seated on the stage, you need to focus on what is going on, because if you lose concentration, everything might go on wrong. So I'm sure all of us, we actually focus on what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. There's one more thing that I want you guys to do for us, because you're representing your schools. You're also representing your regions. You may not know that. And you're representing 3 churches, apparently. Did you know that? So I want you guys to sing your school anthem. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Shall we start with... Let's start with the words, because you're there. You ready, guys? Can you get closer to Noble? Yeah. All right. Noble, you have to start too, because you are the one with the mic.
Okay.
Oh,
Opokuwari School, alma mater, born of a great name, fought with a mighty sword. Blessed by the Almighty God, in the radiance shall receive light. Sure by.
All the best to the finalists. Remember, the finals will be live on the Joy News channel tomorrow, exactly when it begins, live from the University of Ghana, Legon, of course. Now, we make way for business now, and International Advertising Association is promoting diversity as it inducts its first African president.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Business. My name is Darryl Kwao. The Ghana Institute of Architects says COVID-19 has negatively impacted on business at an event to commemorate World Architecture Day. In Accra, president of the Institute, SM Korte, said businesses of members almost came to a standstill. More in this report.
In an engagement with Joy Business, president of the Ghana Institute of Architects, SM Korte, debunked claims that their services are overpriced. Hence, not many people can engage the services of an architect.
I am aware of that. But truth be told, that it's often not the reality. It's often exaggerated. The service and the quality that you get from engaging an architect is often something that most people who have done so would attest to it. You build a building to last a lifetime. These are the products of what we do. Is not for today, it's not for 2 years or 3 years, it's for a lifetime. And perhaps it's worth the investment. Most people would probably build only once in their lifetime or may never build. If you're engaging an architect service to dream of something that would serve your purpose today, 10 years, 50 years, and even be passed on to your children, it's probably worth the investment to get an architect's input into.
So, Architect Korte further explained that COVID-19 almost collapsed the architectural industry, rendering the sector absolutely ineffective.
Well, it's been a massive setback in many regards. As you may know, construction is something, or buildings are things that people do not consider part of one's basic necessity. COVID-19 brought with it a lot of economic hardships that people had to think of how they were going to live through the next day. And when people are in such states, the last thing they will be thinking about is construction of buildings and houses and offices. So yes, there are also a lot of international partners who are involved in our real estate industry.
In other news, the International Advertising Association says it will improve on diversity in various activities as an industry. This is one of the key objectives of the newly inducted president of the association, JoyNews. According to him, it is time for the association to diversify many of its operations due to the lessons learned from the impact of the outbreak of COVID-19. There's more in this report.
The advertising industry has been hard hit with the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic due to a massive cut in budget and activities by corporate bodies. According to the newly inducted president, the time has come for the industry to look beyond its traditional way of operating in order to increase its profitability. JoyNews also promised an all-inclusive administration that will support the promotion of all gender activities.
I know it may sound mundane, but without money, many of the things we want to do and would want to see happen just can't happen. We will thus do all within our power to ensure and increase our revenues in a bid to ensure that we leave the IAA in a more financially stable state than we are today. Ladies and gentlemen, a few months ago, in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic, our executive directors in Europe came up with a brilliant idea of organizing several webinars on various topics that kept the world engaged at the height of that difficult period. I've had occasion to congratulate them for the initiative, and I'd like to do so again today. I was honored to be invited to moderate one of those sessions on a topic that means a lot to me: diversity and inclusion. On the back of that session, I granted an interview to Horizon Suez, where I used a quote that was first shared with me by my friend, indeed our friend and VP Bharat, that says, "Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance." I find that quote particularly relevant to our own organization today, and I have owned it so much, Bharat will have a hard time convincing anybody he was the original source. More than ever, businesses, governments, non-profits, and other organizations around the world are finding it imperative to adopt a diversity and inclusion mindset in order to remain viable and relevant in today's global marketplace, and the IAA cannot be any different.
The president has also proposed to the board to mark every 3rd October as World Communications Day.
Permit me to share with you one special initiative that we can and should start immediately. Many of you will know that I have spoken on various occasions about the need to set aside a day on the calendar where the world of marketing, advertising, and all forms of communication can let our powers combine towards promoting, creating awareness about, or helping to resolve any of a myriad of problems that are faced around the world. It is my hope that at the end of today, with the approval of the board, the IAA will declare the 3rd of October, which marks the birth of the IAA 82 years ago this year, World Communications Day.
And there's a full bulletin at the top of the hour. Up next, sports.